Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Lunch and Learn with the Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center and the Disability Rights Center of the Virgin Islands. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Lunch and Learn with the Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center and the Disability Rights Center of the Virgin Islands. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Lunch and Learn with the Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center and the Disability Rights Center of the Virgin Islands. Good afternoon.
Has your business been affected by COVID-19? The Virgin Islands Small Business Development Center is available to assist entrepreneurs and small businesses in the U.S. Virgin Islands. The VI SBDC is sustained by the University of the Virgin Islands and the U.S. Small Business Administration and collaborates with local agencies to support the small business community. The VI SBDC is nationally accredited and provides free consulting, business education training, and technical assistance. Attend workshops with subject matter experts from both the public and private sector. From idea generation to exit strategies, the staff at the VI SBDC is ready to assist you. Now is the time to contact them if you need assistance with the federal Paycheck Protection Program, as this funding opportunity is scheduled to end May 31st, 2021. So don't wait. Call or email them to find out how they can help your business grow and succeed.
¿Su negocio ha sido afectado por COVID-19? El Centro de Desarrollo de Pequeñas Empresas está disponible para ayudar a los empresarios en las Islas Vírgenes de los Estados Unidos. El VISBDC es sostenido por la Universidad de las Islas Vírgenes y la Administración de Pequeñas Empresas de los Estados Unidos para apoyar a la comunidad de negocios pequeños. El VISBDC está acreditado a nivel nacional y ofrece consultoría gratuita, educación empresarial y asistencia técnica. Asiste a talleres con expertos en la materia, tanto del sector público como del privado. Desde generaciones de ideas hasta estrategia de salida, el personal del VISBDC está listo para ayudarlo. Ahora es el momento de contactarlos si necesita ayuda con el Programa Federal de Protección de Pago, ya que esta oportunidad de financiamiento está programada para finalizar el 31 de mayo del 2021. Llame o envíe un correo electrónico para averiguar cómo puede ayudar a que su negocio crezca y tenga éxito.
Hey, Joe, I'll go ahead and start the presentation.
Sorry. Stami, you can go ahead and bring up your PowerPoint as I do the introduction.
Go right ahead, I'm all set.
Okay. Shami has been in the disability field for over 20 years as an advocate for parents who have children in special education. After being an advocate, Shami worked as a director of advocacy and case management at an independent living center, and then eventually at a regional as a regional technical assistance manager at Cornell University's Employment and Disability Institute. Her current position as an advocate with the Disability Rights Center of the Virgin Islands entails her doing trainings to parent support groups, and work with various employment entities such as VIDOL, vocational rehab, along with business organization. Shami's areas of expertise include, but are not limited to, parent education and training, disability rights laws, workforce development, employment, and disability and grant writing. Shami holds a BA in anthropology from Nazareth College in Rochester, New York. Our other presenter for today is Mr. Adam Powell, and Adam is an entrepreneur and web professional with wide-ranging experience in nearly all aspects of building, managing, maintaining, and optimizing businesses that are online or internet dependent. He has worked in search marketing for over a decade, and his initial experience with web accessibility techniques was in the context of search engine optimization, which is SEO. Having a strong preference for open source software, he is most experienced with tools and software that are free and open source, particularly the WordPress content management system. He is the co-founder of a business called ADA First, and you can find that at https://www.adafirst.org. And with that, I will turn over the presentation to Ms. Shami Carr and Mr. Adam Powell.
Good morning, everyone, and good morning. Hopefully everybody is well and faring through the COVID-19 pandemic. And definitely, we all feel there's some light at the end of the tunnel, meaning hopefully we can start reopening. We've got the vaccination, and hopefully all of that's going to bring some positivity and some recovery to the situation going on. One of the things certainly was a huge outcome, kind of unexpectedly, of course, was all this remote, whether it's remote learning, remote working, or remote buying. And one of the things we've talked about forever, seems like, for at least 10 years now, and Adam will talk very specifically about this, is really pushing to make websites more accessible. Everything is so virtual as we speak, and the pandemic really kind of heightened that need. And because everything was so much more online, it really begged the question, is everything what's online is accessible? Some of it, we talk about compliancy, but our angle today, we really want to talk about profitability. As a small business, particularly in the territory, I'm sure people have been not only struggling, some have had to close. And so we want to be able to provide opportunities for existing businesses to have some opportunity where maybe they didn't think about online presence and how important it is and how much traffic comes through online. So today I'm going to talk about the angle of more of the ADA side, going to talk a little bit about business sense and the tax incentives. And then I'm going to hand it over to Adam. He'll pull up his PowerPoint then to talk much more specifically about what it means to be accessible on the web, especially with e-commerce. Okay, so with that, so today we want to make sure that small businesses that are on with us, that there's a business sense to consider when it comes to accessible websites, and especially if you have a point of sale platform. Talking about return on investment, especially with Title III of the ADA, because that's where, again, e-commerce, including on-site commerce, is covered. We're going to talk about the tax credit as well. And then again, Adam's going to talk really about the nuts and bolts of what an accessible website looks like. So the first question we want to ask is, do you as a business have a website, just in general? So Mary Jo, if you want to pull that up.
I'm sorry, what was, oh, do you have a, does your business have a website? Yes or no? If you guys can answer that question in the chat, that would be greatly appreciated.
And Mary Jo, you can just let me know the answers because I can't see the chat in the presentation.
Okay. Of the persons that have answered, we have 100% yes.
Okay, wonderful. So we are definitely speaking to people who have online presence, whether that means you have brick and mortar and an online presence, or you only have online presence. So that's exciting right there to know that you're at least on that part of the equation with being virtual. So now let's talk about really specifically the business sense. And one of the things that most businesses struggle with, and they continue to struggle with, is this whole transition. And I'm going to actually jump to the third bullet to start, the transition of brick and mortar to online. And I want to give a couple of examples, because what's happened is that companies will say, well, under the ADA, when it was written, it talked about brick and mortar. I don't see anything in there that talks about online, web, e-commerce. And as we know, with many laws, things will change. The society changes. So the law needs to reflect that. And a lot of that reflection has come through legal precedent. And we just had a very big one I'll talk about in a few minutes with the Supreme Court. And then also with Department of Justice. Department of Justice actually has been really looking at web accessibility of not only of government websites, of course, because that's one of the big regulation for them, but it's also talking about such things as this company called edX. edX is an online class platform. You can take several classes. And back in, I believe, well, I don't have the date, but it was up in the last 5 years. They actually had to do a settlement agreement with them. And that lets, again, businesses know, yes, DOJ, Department of Justice, is seeing a transition from brick and mortar to online. Here's one example with edX Inc. Another one is called Peapod. Peapod also had online presence, and this was in 2015. They did a settlement agreement that, again, made it more accessible to people. Again, it's not always just about visual. That's the majority of the accessibility, but you do have people who may have seizure disorders where, you know, those hot buttons and those flashing lights are a problem. You may have folks who have manual dexterity where if you got to do a lot of clicking, a lot of moving around with your hand to navigate it, that can be very tricky. But the majority of folks we're talking about, but not exclusively, certainly, are people with visual and different types of visual disabilities, not just fully blind. And the last one I want to give as an example, again, to really get that interpretation of that transition from brick and mortar to online is with Wells Fargo. And that was all the way back in 2012. So you can see that Department of Justice has really gotten their hands around the concept and the issue and the transition of brick and mortar to online. Those are just three examples I wanted to pull right from their website. If people would like to go into DOJ's website, at the bottom, I put the portal for the business. But if you just do 88.gov, you can go into the settlement agreements and look up a whole bunch of information related to this. The reason I say that they're helpful is because they actually show some practice, not just policy, but practice of how to do it. So I wanted to really mention the whole transition because that is really the first thing that we hear why businesses, they feel they don't need to be accessible, let alone want to be accessible. So that train has kind of left the station in the sense that, yes, Department of Justice has already set that precedent. And again, I'll mention one more before I close out to pass to Adam about what happened last year. Okay, so let's go back to the first topic of business sense. As we know, I think most people know, the tween customer base gets spent 3 to 4 times more money than any other customer base. Even though they have very little disposable income, they've got their parents or guardians, but the tween is the highest, I would say, amount of advertisement money that is spent. But let me tell you, as a disability advocate in the Virgin Islands, I can tell you that I don't think most people know that people with disabilities have a disposable income of nearly $500 billion. I didn't say billion, trillion. 2018, there's a group called AIR. AIR is a very large behavioral and social science organization. This is the most recent information I could find, and this was in 2018. Department of Justice has some information on that, but it's a little bit dated. So I wanted to get the most current one. That's $490 billion that people with disabilities have, customers with disabilities have, that are not tapped into. Right there is a huge return on your investment. I just recently talked to a company down here a couple of days ago, and they said, well, why should we do this? Why should we fix that? We only have 3 people who use a wheelchair that come into our business a year. I said, well, I guarantee you there's more than 3 people who come if they knew you were accessible. So, I think sometimes businesses don't see through the woods that actually not only are there a lot of customers with disabilities, and not just here in the territory, we certainly know this is a heavy tourist area. So certainly we have a lot of tourists also with disabilities. And so I just want to, make that number very loud and clear that almost $500 billion that customers with disabilities have as disposable income. Now, what's interesting about making it easier or streamlining some of the efforts to become more accessible we talk about universal design. So I don't know if people remember way back when the ADA passed in 1990, there was some design, some concept of accessibility that had to go into place. We're talking about physical structural places. And so people really start to say, wow, that ramp is really helpful. Like the delivery person can use it. The person who's got children on a stroller can use it, not just folks who use wheelchairs or have other physical disabilities. So the ramp is like a universal access. And I want to say that in context also of web accessibility. When you have an accessible website, you have created now the virtual ramp. You have created an opportunity now. And again, Adam's going to talk about how much more traffic you get when you create these, what we call universal accessible features, again, online. And so now you think, okay, I'm only focusing on attracting customers with disabilities on my website. But research has shown over and over again, the more accessible you are, the more traffic you're going to get. And I do want to let businesses know here, right in the territory, both, whether you're in St. John, St. Croix, St. Thomas, or Water Island, certainly there's local agencies, particularly one that works with people with disabilities that would be happy to test your website. There are people here, they're called end users. You can call the Independent Living Center. They've got a lot of people who are interested and would be willing to test your website. And so keep that in mind. You don't have to go outside the territory or some virtual land you don't know. You've got people right here in the territory who'd be happy to be part of that, transition to make sure that your website is accessible, because it's nothing worse. And I've seen it so many times when people pay money to make their website accessible, but they never tested it. And they have thrown out $5, $10, $20,000 because they didn't do the last part, which you must test the website. Okay. So if people want that contact information, let me know. I'd be happy to pass it to you depending on which district you are in. Now, I want to mention, last but not least, again, the Department of Justice Business Connection web portal. This is a portal that has got so much information, not just on web accessibility, on everything from reaching customers with disabilities. And that is actually an online a course that you can take to help understand more and more about how to become accessible, not just brick and mortar, but also program and services and other things that you provide at your establishment. They've got also things on service animals. A lot of people have questions on service animals and businesses. So there's just, I don't even know where to end in terms of the information. There's just so much of it. Want to make sure you have that link and check that link out. Everything on there, of course, is free. You can print posters. And one thing we're going to talk about when I close my part is the tax incentive. And that is something, again, that's part of the DOJ's website as well. So let's talk a little bit about the legal oversight and precedent. I mentioned about the government. One of the biggest, and I think the most prominent, of course, statute has to do with Section 508 of the Rehab Act. It's not Section 508 of the ADA. I've seen that many times. It's the Rehab Act. And in there, it talks about the web accessibility requirements, including procurement, but it's for the government specifically. As we know, when the government sets kind of a practice, it does seem to trickle down. And so I have heard businesses use that language of 508, and that's great because you know what? If the government's going to do it and be a good model, there's no reason why other people can't use that same statute to help them to become more accessible. But Section 508 is really what kicked off most of this. Now, also we know that the Americans with Disabilities Act, Title III. Now, Title III is for places of public accommodations. We just talked about brick and mortar. We just talked about online. What is a place of public accommodation? And it's basically any place that's open to the public where people are having goods, services. It can be entertainment. There's no preclusion of what type of public accommodation. If you're open to the public, then you are considered a place of public accommodation. Unlike other parts of ADA, there's certain thresholds. So for example, if you do look at Title I, that talks about 15 or more employees that triggers the ADA obligation. Under Title III, there is no trigger. If you're open to the public, no matter how many people you have working for you, even if you're a sole proprietor, you're open to the public, then you are open to the obligations of the Americans with Disabilities Act under Title III. To bring it back specifically to the websites, Last year, there were over 3,000 cases that were brought forward, which I frankly think that's an incredible amount of number. And Adam and I were talking about this last time we did this training, and that number is only going to increase because people are now getting very savvy to know, hey, I know where I want to spend my dollar. And if you're not accessible, just like the building is, that how can I spend my money? Well, I guess I won't. If the website's not accessible, same thing. And so people are getting very savvy. And so they know that not only has Department of Justice provided many settlement agreements about this as a precedent, but I'm going to skip down to the next bullet, Domino's Pizza. Everybody knows Domino's Pizza. And this case was brought forward all the way back in 2016. But what happened last year, it was upheld by the Supreme Court because they said, we're not going to take this case on. It is the precedent. And we don't need to take this case on because now it is the precedent. So that was determined. The Supreme Court made their statement back in October of last year. And everybody knows Domino's Pizza. This is not a mom and pops. This is a very, very large chain franchise. And so if Domino's Pizza is going to get dinged, you can imagine many other mom and pops straight up to the big corporations are also in the bullseye of this. The good thing is that we have people like Adam, and he's going to talk about who can help you really kind of know where to start. That's some of the hardest part, I think, for businesses. They're like, it sounds great. I like the fact there's a lot of money that I can maybe tap into, and with that disposable income. Hey, I like people with disabilities. I want them to come, but I don't know where to start. So the attitude, the good attitude is there, the good customer service is there, all that good stuff, but still don't know where to start. Okay, so I'm going to close up my part to talk about the DOJ ADA tax incentive. And I will tell you that creating an accessible website, whether it means from conception or retrofitting, and I know everybody mentioned here that they do have a website, that can potentially count. And I only say potential because it's situational. But I believe that if you had a good argument, you absolutely can use the ADA tax credits to help with increasing or retrofitting your website. I also provided the DOJ number, and you can get some technical assistance with the tax package because DRCVI, along with, I really don't know anybody else in the territory that actually does that as part of their accounting to help businesses. But I at least want to give you DOJ so you have some place to start. So, and you've got the hyperlink up on top for the tax packet. And it can be used for the following: removing physical barriers to facilities and vehicles, effective communication, including interpreters, accessible websites and alternative formats, purchase of accessible equipment, and consultation situational. So if you're going to create a website and make it more accessible and you don't know where to start, you will have to consult with someone. So that's why I say the consultation is situational, but accessible website is on their list. So I think this is a great opportunity, and certainly it's a great time to use the tax incentive. But I just wanted to ask as I close, has anybody ever used an ADA tax incentive for anything? Just curious out there, the few businesses that are on here.
And you guys could put your answers in the chat if you've ever used any of the ADA tax incentives. It doesn't look like anybody has used the tax incentive so far.
Okay, I consider this a booyah. Okay, because yeah, it's too bad no one's ever used it, but you know what? This is a yay because now you know about it, and you know people who can help you navigate it. And I'm going to actually I think I'll do it now just so I can close my portion out. Is I want to mention who we work with that also can provide you technical assistance. So the Northeast ADA Center at Cornell University is an affiliate of ours. We work with them closely when it comes to trainings on the ADA and other types of technical stuff, whether it be assistance or outreach. You can call them toll free, no matter where you are in the state. If you're in Federal Region 2, which is New York, New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the US Virgin Islands, you can reach them directly, 800-949-4232, or you can email them at northeastada@cornell.edu. I do want to mention something about the ADA centers. When the ADA was passed in 1990, there was a provision in there that actually created these ADA centers. The formal name of them are called Disability Business Technical Assistance Center. They actually was called the DIPTech, and it was at the time specific for businesses to help come into compliance within the 2-year window from 1990 to 1992. Luckily, they're still around, and there's 10 of them throughout the country. So you can find one no matter what state you live in. You can tell your other colleagues if they want this. It's the same number to get triaged to your closest ADA center. So for us at the Virgin Islands, it is the Northeast ADA Center. Do give them a call. They've got lots of information, and we work very closely with them. And I just want to mention who we are. Again, we're the Disability Rights Center of the Virgin Islands. We've got our website at drcvi.org. You can email us at info@drcvi.org. And you can reach us whether you're in St. Thomas or St. Croix, St. John, Water Island. We've got multiple ways to reach us. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Adam, unless anybody has any specific questions for me right this second.
If you have any questions right now, you can raise your hand and we will recognize you while Adam is putting up his presentation. Okay, we don't have any questions right this minute, but copies of the presentation will be put in the chat so you guys can download that. But also before we end today's presentation, there will be an evaluation form that we would like for you to complete. It is anonymous and it goes to the ADA office in New York. Thank you.
Okay, let's see here. Okay. Hi, everybody. My camera was muted a minute ago. I don't know if you guys can see me or not. There we go. Okay, come on. Where's my mouse? There we go. Okay, there we go. Hi, everybody. Now let's do this. Okay. Oh, this thing doesn't want to. Come on. Okay, here we go. So we're going to talk today about an introduction to accessible e-commerce websites. Essentially making the most of your website. I say this because, you know, as in the introduction, as it said, I got into doing accessibility initially. I didn't realize it was accessibility. I looked at it as search engine optimization because essentially search engines are blind users. So if you need to have search engines understand what your site is, what you're selling, what services you offer, where you're located, when you're open, all those things, you have to approach the website as if the consumer is blind. So initially that was how I got into doing accessibility, was just optimizing sites to get free traffic from search engines. Oh, I guess I'm ahead of myself. Okay, so we're already read that one. We're going to go to the next one. Okay, so this is probably how you see a website, where, you know, there's menus, there's pictures, there's colors, sidebars, navigation, all kinds of various things. Typically images, styling, buttons, pop-ups, forms, and links. And pop-ups can be a doozy. Now, this is how a search engine basically sees that same website. You can actually see at the very top there, it says skip to main, and that is purely for blind people so that if they are viewing a site, they don't have to navigate through every single link on every single page just to get to the main content, because all those top navigation are all going to be the same across every page. And oftentimes blind users they'll call it tabbing through a website, where you just hit tab and it highlights every link until you get to the one you want. And that's the content you get to. Much like how if you're working on a form and you type in one field and you hit tab, it then goes to the next field. Does the same thing for people using a screen reader. And so that skip to main is a feature just for them, so that if they view more than one page on your site, they don't have to listen to every link in your menu on every single page. So not only is this how a search engine would see it, but obviously this is how a blind person would read it on a screen reader. A couple more examples. So these are getting into forms. You can see like where it's filtering up the customer reviews, the colors, the features, all those things. If you don't have the visual cues, you have to read through them one at a time and select the one you want. Now I cheated a little bit on these two images to the right because I did leave the images in place, which blind users would, well, not see. So you can still see a little bit of how it's, much less easy to work with than what you would be accustomed to. Actually, if you look at the very bottom one, you can see a lot of where it's talking about the little finite details of all this and that. And you can see it's not in a very pretty form. I mean, it's functional. A screen reader will read it, and that's important. But that is essentially the largest audience for people who really need accessible websites is users that are visually disabled. There are some other instances as well, as Shemi mentioned, you don't want to have strobing lights that give someone a seizure. If someone is deaf, they may need captions on their videos that describe, that so that they can, not captions, but subtitles, obviously, so they can read what's going on. So this is a tool that I'm going to go over with you a little bit today. This is called Andy. It is the Accessible Name and Descriptor Inspector. It's created by the Social Security Administration. It's free for anyone to use. If you go to the link shown, then you can essentially drag a little icon up to your bookmarks bar. And then when you go to any website, you click it and it will open as it shows under where it says Meet Andy. So the first thing that it focuses on is focusable elements. So you can see where it's talking about inputs, and it shows you, the Andy output is what a screen reader would read. It tells you if there's any issues with those, and it just lets you kind of go through one at a time, one single page at a time, but it lets you automatically detect a wide range of issues that would impact people with visual disabilities. The different things that it stands for and the different features it has are accessible. Andy is focusable elements. Then there's graphics and images, links and buttons, tables, structures, color contrast, hidden content, and iframes. Iframes typically are hidden content as well. It's like a picture in a picture is the easiest way I can describe that. And when you're actually using it, you can see if you look at the illustration of the Big Lots site, there it's looking at links. It's throwing an error where it's saying that link is an ambiguous link because it has the same name and description as another link, but it goes to a different page, essentially is what that means. href is the destination of the link. And it'll go through each one by one. You can see it has 108 links found, 7 accessibility alerts, 4 link alerts, and literally you can go through them one at a time and it'll point to them and highlight them just like it's showing there. I didn't add any editing to that page at all. That's not something I marked up. So when I was actually working on this, I came across a big accessibility problem. So as I was trying to put this together, suddenly a pop-up showed up. Trending categories, trending products. If you're a visually disabled user, that is incredibly disorienting. And oftentimes it essentially takes the focus, which is the thing that your browser is acting on, away from whatever you were doing. So you're trying to navigate to choose your store, and bing, suddenly this thing pops up and you don't know what happened. Oftentimes you can get locked in it, basically, where no matter how many times you hit tab, you won't be able to get out of it. So pop-ups are a thing to be really careful of, because essentially it's called a change of context. And to somebody who's not expecting it, you were picking your store and next thing you know, you're hearing about a Broyhill couch. It can make your site very difficult, if not impossible to use. So things that pop up, which are very, very common in e-commerce. I mean, a lot of people have something that pops up when you're leaving and says, hey, sign up for our email, or something like this that pops up as a promotion. And it is incredibly difficult for visually disabled people to process. And if it is not done very carefully, they can get locked in it where they can't get the focus back to the actual main content, no matter how hard they try. And then they will end up abandoning your site. So this is a great example of a real world accessibility problem. There is a website built by the British government to test accessibility auditing tools. They called it the world's least accessible page. The link to it is at the top there. Some quotes from it are, we deliberately introduced 142 accessibility barriers to a page content and ran them through 13 automated tools. The best performing tool in this category picked up 50% of deliberate mistakes. And that goes back to what Shami was saying, that you really do need human testers to use these. There are automated tools you can use. There are quick checks. I mean, there are some things that are so common that I can oftentimes glance at the code of a website and immediately know if it's inaccessible. But even the best tools are only going to catch about half. And almost all of those things that it'll catch are pretty much all focused on blind users who navigate via screen readers. So there are potentially other users who, these things may not test for at all. An example being people over 50, about half of them need reading glasses. There is a way, I don't know if you guys have ever noticed on websites where you open it, let's say you open a website on your phone and you try to zoom in and it won't let you. Well, there's two settings. You can say, yes, allow users to zoom in, or no, don't allow users to zoom in. Well, if you choose no, don't allow users to zoom in because your perfect layout from your designer might not look quite so pretty. You are causing difficulties for anybody who needs to magnify that, which frankly, even I need to magnify it a lot, and I don't need glasses. So it's a pet peeve of mine when sites choose to make it so that you cannot zoom in when you're looking at it on your phone. So there are potentially other things that these tools may not catch that, if someone were to bring them up, it's certainly worth considering. But the vast majority of these really do look at how a blind user uses sites and if they can use it on a screen reader. Some of the things you can do to, consider what will make it more accessible and what is the power of digital media. So I come from a design background. So I'm very accustomed to laying something out like you would a magazine, where everything is to the pixel. You can choose the exact size of the font. The picture is going to be exactly this shape and this size with this much border, and people are going to flip through it in this order. And that is not how people use the web. The web, people will run a translation program that switches it to a different language, and then all of a sudden all your layouts break. And there's instances where, let's say they need contrast and they don't have enough. There's a little script that can basically make something from high contrast, and it can make it so that it's white on black or black on white. Some people need colors to be toned down because they have neurological issues. There are scripts that'll do that as well. So by, thinking this through when you work on your website, have new changes done, or build a website from the beginning, is that the web is just not as, what you see your website looking like isn't a fixed thing as how everyone else will see your website. I mean, if somebody who speaks Arabic goes to your website and uses a translation system, that language is right to left, and suddenly all kinds of things start going weird. So thinking of a website very rigidly, like this is exactly how it will look for everyone on all devices in all circumstances, just isn't realistic. So embrace it. That's the power of the web, is that you can change text sizes, you can change contrast, you can translate things. As noted earlier, I encourage people to reconsider ads and pop-ups and autoplay videos, stuff like that. Using automated tools to help learn what may be fantastic, so do not rely on. And the gist of, the moral of the story, as always, is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If I was blind, I'd certainly hope people would put the effort into the website to make it so that I could use it. And I guess to touch on a couple examples, one of the things that users oftentimes have a hard time with on e-commerce sites is forms. Can they submit the form? Is it labeled? Do they know what it means? Actually, the Domino's lawsuit, the Supreme Court that Shami was talking about, largely deals with forms. So their site and app actually were almost completely accessible. What the user could not do is he could not apply a coupon. So he could shop, he could buy, but he could not apply a coupon. And that's an issue with forms. There was no way for him to access it. There was no way to do it. So essentially, you could view it as, a tax on blind people. That in and of itself, just that simple form issue was enough to get them from federal court to appeals court to not being heard by the Supreme Court and back to the district court. That's a very expensive endeavor. It's a lot cheaper to fix it up front. Another common example would be, let's say you have t-shirts and you have them in multiple sizes. Okay, great, easy. Small, medium, large. Checkboxes are almost certainly labeled. When you set it up, you're going to set up the sizes that you have. But an example of where that could go wrong is, and I don't know about you, but this is a pet peeve of mine, is Starbucks coffee sizes. So Starbucks coffee, they size their coffees in short, tall, grande, venti, and trenta. Now, if you don't know what those are, I do enough because I've been there enough times to have an idea, but I still go in there and order a large coffee and they still correct me on it. So imagine if you don't know what those are and there's no explainer next to it on the form that's accessible, and you're just trying to get a coffee and get out of there. That would make it completely inaccessible, even though there's labels next to those checkboxes. So thinking things through and as to how someone else would use it goes a long way. Speaking of kind of improving your bottom line and having it be useful for you, there is actually a website and app called wheelmap.org. And it is a listing of places that are rated from green, yellow to red in terms of how accessible they are. It, as you can probably guess by wheelmap.org, it focuses on wheelchair accessibility. But I've actually corresponded with them, and they have no problem. They're going to include accessible sites as well. If you request, that they add your location or that they add your website, they'll probably happily do both. They were very easy to deal with when I talked to them. So, that's going to be a resource that people that are disabled that can be your customers. If you're listed there, you're much more likely to get them to come to you if they know you serve them. Much like, if you have a dog, you're much more likely to go to a place that is dog friendly. And there are websites that list, dog friendly hotels, dog friendly things to do. And that will increase your patronage of dog owners. Well, having listings like this and making it obvious that your site is accessible and that your location, matter of fact, is accessible, will increase your business just by virtue of having people be aware of it and going out of their way to patronize it. Okay. Okay, anybody else? Anybody have any questions?
I don't see any questions in the chat for Adam or for Shami, but what I'm going to do is drop in the evaluation in the chat so you guys can complete that, and also put in a copy of the presentations in their PDF format. So you guys can have that. Now, question, wheelmap.org, that's like WHEEL
Correct.
map. Okay, can you type that in the chat for folks for us, please? Okay, and in the interim, there's a question with concern to translations issues of with concern to translation issues of websites. How would you address that with DIY website builders like Squarespace?
So in general, you don't need to address it anymore. Google used to have a little widget that you could add that would put, you may have seen it on websites. I think sometimes it's still on websites, but they don't really support it anymore. But it was a little box at the top that it would say, translate this website. Part of the reason they don't really support that anymore and that you don't really need to worry about it is it's typically built into browsers now. So, Google, if you visit a page that is said that it's encoded in a language that is different from what your browser preferences are, it will automatically ask you, do you want to translate this page? I believe Firefox also has, it's a drop-down option where it just says, translate this page. I'm pretty sure, I don't really use Microsoft browsers, but I'm pretty sure Safari, Firefox, and Google Chrome all have built-in options that will allow a user to translate a website.
One thing, Adam, if I could just jump in also, is I know with Microsoft, they've got a way that you can do alt text and that you could take, I don't know if that is related, but just another feature too, because we had done that with some stuff with alt text and just making sure that it was actually accessible, how they were doing that too.
Yeah, and actually Google recently released a tool that will, if there isn't alt text, their machine vision has gotten pretty good. There's only so many pictures of the Grand Canyon where it sees the colors and it understands what those colors are. It sees the GPS points and the metadata from the photo, and it knows, okay, this is a picture of the Grand Canyon. So even if someone uploads a picture of the Grand Canyon that doesn't have alt text, there is a setting in Google Chrome where you can ask Google to make a guess as to what the alt text of that picture should be. Now, that's not perfect, but for somebody who relies on that, it is better than nothing. And it's a really cool feature. It definitely does not replace doing it yourself, because when you do it yourself, you can make sure it's right. You can make sure it has the context, right? So let's say there's a picture of you and your family standing in front of the Grand Canyon, goofing off, giving each other bunny ears. Google, the automated alt text might just be Grand Canyon or group at Grand Canyon. It may completely miss the meaning and the nuance of the photo. So you definitely want to do it yourself. I guess one thing I did forget to go over is, unless you have taken steps to make your site accessible, I can almost guarantee it's not. If you're starting a new website, WordPress has what they call accessible ready. Accessible ready is great because you still have to do the work of adding the alt text, of giving your files appropriate names, of structuring your links and things in a way that would make sense to someone that's disabled. Kind of one of the worst ones is, a lot of sites just have click here or read more. Well, if you have 15 links on your page that say read more, I have no idea which one I should click to get to the article I want to go to. So there is still some work involved in making a site accessible, even if you start with an accessible ready template or framework. And if you haven't started with that, then you kind of have to go back and just go through those things. And that's when you run the automated tests and fix anything that it finds, and hopefully get some actual users to test it and fix anything that they have a hard time with.
So Adam, if we sent out an article that, well, use a real world example for our BizBuzz, we have links for people to access or register for different webinars, and it says click here, register here. How would we make that more user friendly?
Register for the May 6th accessible e-commerce.
So we would put that as alt text.
Well, in that case, I'm assuming you mean a link, right? So that would be a link
Correct.
to sign up.
Correct.
So you just make that the text of the link. And, links can look like buttons. I mean, oftentimes they do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, instead of just having click here, you just make it descriptive. You can make it the title of the event. That would probably be the best. If you were to default to the date, that would at least be unique. So there wasn't, like, when a person on a screen reader uses it, there's a way that they can navigate where they say, okay, just give me a list of all the links on the page. Or another way they can do it is they can say, okay, give me a list of all the headings on the page. If they say, what are all the links on the page? And it reads through that list, and there's 10 of them that say register here or click here. Even if they've read through and found the thing they want to attend, they're not going to know which of those 10 links will do it. So there is kind of a fallback they can do depending on like your URL structure, that if the link is completely undescriptive, they can have the screen reader say, okay, where does this actually go? And so if the link has words in it that describe where it's going, that's great. But if the link, a lot of times links aren't descriptive. A lot of times it'll be, webinar number 463297 4B. You can actually even see in this link for your survey, right? So thankfully it does have May 6th website and training. So that is, if in an absolute fallback, if there were no other context, a screen reader could read that link and they could probably guess that that's, if they wanted to register for this, that's, or let's say take the survey, that's the survey they wanted. And oftentimes, on your system, you may not be able to control what your URLs are. They may be gibberish URLs. You can add what's called a title. That's a hidden feature. But ideally, to make it easy, you want to have your links be unique and descriptive.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do we have any more questions for Adam and Shami? As usual, I found this very interesting.
Mary Jo, I do have a comment at the end.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Okay. If one thing I want to make sure is that in terms of our partners, I mentioned the Northeast ADA Center, is to, you can certainly give us a call. We can help you. We can certainly give them a call when it comes to the tax incentives and helping you with access issues. So I just want to make sure you've got, more than one resource when it comes to that here in the territory, not only just us, but certainly the ADA Center. I want to extra highlight that again, because as Adam was saying, he's got the nuts and bolts, but sometimes you need funding too. So I want to make sure that the two can go hand in hand.
Okay, great. All right, that seems to be all of our questions for today, but folks know that you can reach out to Adam and to Shami, and tomorrow we have a webinar on fall prevention in collaboration with Safety in Paradise. That's tomorrow at 10 a.m. And you don't have to be in construction for that webinar to be of use for you. So you can check that out tomorrow. Next week, Tuesday, we have the SBA with their updates on the pandemic programs. And that's what and starting next week, Wednesday, is the business plan writing course, Next Level. It's an intense 10-week program. It's designed for people that are starting their business so that they have a good business plan to launch from after 10 weeks of class. Or if you're an existing business, it gives you some in-depth stuff so that you can take your business to the next level. But one, it's intense. Two, it's 3 hours a night every Wednesday night from May the 12th through July the 14th. The cost is $149. And in addition to your 3 hours of coursework on Wednesday nights, there's also homework. So it is not a walk in the park, but if you put in the work, you will have a good product at the end, and it should help you take your business to the next level as indicated by the title. Okay, next question. Oh, that's a statement. Wheel map is a map of locations rated for accessibility. And my understanding is that the map locations can be marked anywhere in the world. So you or your users can add locations to it and rate them for accessibility. Well, that's a good plug for your business, especially if you're in the tourism-oriented business. And I think the SBDC should look at putting our business on that map because we are accessible for people that have physical disabilities once we're back to seeing people in person. And we're accessible now because we can see people virtually. Well, very good. Thank you for that, Adam. So if we have no more questions for today, I want to thank you guys for attending on behalf of our State Director, Mr. Ted Gutierrez, and the Disability Rights Center of the Virgin Islands, Mr. Mr. Adam Powell, and the SBDC staff on St. Thomas and St. Croix. Want to wish you all a very pleasant day. See you tomorrow in our fall prevention workshop, and have a great weekend.